C'est la vie.
I am a peace process baby.
I should just make a song called I Love Europeans.
I always say, like, people in Northern Ireland have two faces.
Peace Babies, un documentaire audio de Café Babel. 4 portraits pour comprendre l'identité de la génération qui a grandi après les troubles en Irlande du Nord, en toute subjectivité. Épisode 3, Clio.
Because I have an Irish name, right? So Cléna, everyone just calls me Cleo, but Cléna is an Irish name.
Clio, c'est une des premières personnes qu'on rencontre en Irlande du Nord. On fait sa connaissance au moment où on débarque avec nos sacs à dos dans le labo de Noé, mon ami qui fait sa thèse à Belfast et qui nous accueille pour la semaine. Elle est en blouse blanche, au milieu de toutes les machines de haute technologie de la nouvelle aile scientifique de l'université de Queen. Tout au long de la semaine, Noé nous raconte toutes sortes d'histoires et d'anecdotes. La plupart du temps, quand on lui demande qui est-ce qui lui a raconté, il nous répond « c'est Clio ». Intrigué, on veut absolument la revoir. Quelques jours plus tard, on retrouve donc Clio dans un des bars irlandais du centre-ville de Belfast. On se rend compte en rigolant que c'est dans le même bar qu'on a continué la soirée avec Anna l'autre soir, après notre entretien au Sunflower. Nous entrons dans le pub. Il est 19h. Tout est encore tranquille. Mais nous savons que d'ici quelques dizaines de minutes, les musiciens vont arriver. Ils vont s'installer dans le coin du bar avec leurs instruments pour démarrer la session irlandaise. Adossée au banc en bois et une pinte de Guinness à la main, Clio nous reçoit. Elle va demander au patron, qu'elle connaît bien, si on peut utiliser la salle du haut pour enregistrer l'entretien au calme. Il accepte et on monte dans une cachette de VIP. Noé a parlé à Clio du fait qu'on essaye de rencontrer un duo qui rappe en gaélique irlandais. Et comme Belfast n'est pas si grand, elle les a déjà rencontrés.
And they're really nice. I met them. I was joking with Noé, saying that if you were going to meet them, like you met Anna here, now you've met me here, and probably because they drink here, you would have met them here if they were going to interview with you, like. But they are nice. Like Noé will tell you on nights out sometimes I get drunk and just plant myself beside people.
Not sometimes.
No, every time. So because especially when I hear people speaking in Irish, it fascinates me.
Clio parle le gaélique irlandais. Pas parfaitement encore, elle est toujours en train d'apprendre, mais c'est important pour elle. Le nom de ce fameux groupe ? Kneecap. On essaye de les rencontrer, mais ils sont overbookés. Ils tournent pas mal en Irlande et dans tout le Royaume-Uni.
I think it's so popular because see now in Belfast you have so many new Irish speaking schools that have opened and more people are speaking Irish, and now that those kids who went through those Irish schools at first are becoming teenagers, adults, they connect with their music, you know, because like they know what they're saying. But yeah, I think they're popular because of that. Like you have Irish is starting to boom in Belfast like no other way it had before. Like you would have had like an old man in a bar who maybe spoke it and like no one else around him spoke it with him, you know. But now everybody, I think especially with the whole issue with the Irish Language Act as well, like it's lit a fire under people's asses. Like, okay, well, if we're going to be told that we're not allowed to speak our language, which isn't exactly what people were against it for, I'm kind of in two minds about the Irish Language Act, to be honest.
Quand on rentre au Madens, on découvre des murs recouverts d'affiches et de stickers féministes, antifascistes, pro-indépendance de la Catalogne et même pour Nantes en Bretagne. On demande alors à Clio si, comme celui-ci, les bars sont particulièrement marqués politiquement.
Some bars maybe politics is taboo. If it's a mixed bar, you just don't talk about politics. You don't talk about your background, you don't talk about culture, you don't talk about your opinions about culture. It's difficult in Belfast. I feel like you always have to watch what you're saying in particular places, in particular bars. Whenever I left school, I started to see like discrimination. Like maybe if I was called Claire or Sarah or something, I maybe wouldn't have experienced it. But people, whenever they hear an Irish name sometimes, are like, like, you know, sort of get their back up and, all right, Catholic. There's always there's always a fear and a stigma attached to your opinions. As I said before, the two faces of people in Belfast: the face of being nice to everybody and chatting to somebody who is standing at the bar waiting for a drink, and then actually people hearing what you have to say or where you come from, or it can, as I said, put a target on your back, you know. So.
Quand elle n'est pas au bar, Clio planche sur sa thèse, celle qu'elle réalise au sein de l'université de Queen en génétique. Ses recherches consistent à évaluer l'efficacité du V-notching comme outil de gestion des pêches de homards en mer d'Irlande. C'est une technique qui consiste à marquer les femelles homards en leur prélevant un petit morceau de carapace sur la queue en forme de V. Ça sert à identifier les femelles recapturées, estimer leur fertilité et mieux gérer les pêches de homards.
Like, I was the only person out of my extended family to go to university. Like, you know, and like so many people are proud of me for actually going on and doing a PhD and all this here. If I hadn't have got the opportunity to go and work there, I'd probably still be cleaning toilets. So, yeah, it's powerful to me too.
Clio nous donne l'impression d'être une encyclopédie vivante. Curieuse et farouche, elle connaît l'histoire politique de la ville sur le bout des doigts. C'est dans le nord de Belfast qu'elle a construit sa conscience politique. Elle est née au sein d'une famille d'ascendance catholique de la classe ouvrière. L'Ouest et le Nord sont connus comme les deux quartiers catholiques de la capitale nord-irlandaise. Avec Hélène, on lui demande si elle se souvient de la première fois où elle a pris conscience des frontières et des tensions qu'il y avait dans sa ville.
Well, the very first time that I ever felt like I should be careful about my name, like, so politics was never really something that I was particularly interested in until I was probably about 16, 17. But I remember the first time I ever thought, oh fuck, like, I need to be careful. Me and my mum had went to my stepdad, who's a Protestant, was with my mum at the time. We had went down to a place called the Shankill Road, which is in North. Well, no, actually, technically it's West Belfast, but it's really close to North Belfast, where I'm from. And whenever my brother, sorry, it was my mum, my brother, and myself. And before we got out of the car, my mum was like, "Right, your name." I can't remember exactly what my name was. I was given a name, you know, and she was like, "Daniel, make sure you call her this," and blah blah blah, and this is your name while we're here, right? And I mean, nothing would have happened. Probably not. Well, this was probably late 90s, so like the Shankill bomb and everything had happened, and it was a pretty harsh time in Belfast. Like, there was a lot of stuff still happening. It was like the tail end of the Troubles, pretty much.
Pour vous situer, The Shankill Bomb est une attaque explosive commise dans un restaurant du quartier de Shankill Road à Belfast le 23 octobre 1993. L'attentat, commis par des membres de l'IRA, vise plusieurs dirigeants d'une organisation paramilitaire loyaliste, UDA, Ulster Defence Association. Le scénario prévu pour éviter les pertes civiles ne se déroule pas comme prévu. L'un des poseurs de bombes ainsi que 9 civils sont tués.
And that was the first time that I ever really thought, Jesus, this is weird that I have to be careful about what I say, or my family have to be careful about what they say, and probably nothing would have happened, but it's just the fact that I think that's the first time I ever seen my mum worry about that sort of thing, you know. And funny enough, the guy who done the bombing works in the shop, like just by where I live now, so I see him all the time. It's crazy.
Curieuse, Clio nous demande à tous quel est notre ressenti par rapport à Belfast. Noé, lui, trouve que le nationalisme et l'identité irlandaise sont très représentés.
But what maybe users have been exposed to is like Belfast's nice face. Do you know what I mean? Like, my mum's a Catholic and my stepdad's a Protestant. I was integrated. I went through integrated education, where everyone was educated together, you know. But even in kids nowadays, in working class families, like, they are being pressurized through paramilitary still to join like terrorism, and or instilling bitterness in kids that they have no fucking understanding about the politics or the history. Do you know? So like, everything may on the surface look like it's pie-eyed and it's very, things are improving, things are getting better. Don't get me wrong. Like, the majority of people here are very forward thinking and believe that, you know, that people should be integrated and everybody should get along. But yeah, it's not that I wouldn't say I'm more bitter or anything against anybody, because I have a lot of Protestant friends. My stepdad's Protestant, but what I find difficult on both sides of the community are people, especially in my own community. Fuck, I sound like I'm just talking about Protestants here. In my own side of the community, it's fucking disgraceful. Like the amount of children that they're bringing in to organisations and poisoning them with information that these children have no experience with. Like there's some bars in Ardoyne that I wouldn't feel comfortable drinking in.
Androin, c'est le quartier de Clio au nord de Belfast. Celui de la classe ouvrière, majoritairement catholique et républicain. Il est tristement connu pour le grand nombre d'incidents pendant la période des troubles.
You know, things were looking really good for a very fucking long time, and now the politicians bickering, and that's why the government basically fell apart here. And I feel like divisions are starting to deepen again. But the good thing about the school that I went to is that we learnt history. So maybe in some schools you'll not learn so much about Irish history or British history. The curriculum can be picked and chosen, but in our school it was very much, we need to make sure that it's non-biased and that people get the kids get a good understanding of especially the history of Northern Ireland, where we come from and that sort of thing,
Peace Babies, épisode 3, Clio. Dans l'épisode précédent, nous avons parlé avec Anna de ses années d'études en Angleterre et de l'impact de ces dernières sur la redéfinition de son identité. Clio aussi est partie étudier quelques années de l'autre côté de la mer d'Irlande. Pendant quelques années, elle a posé ses valises à Liverpool. Malgré une enfance et des ascendances totalement différentes, Anna et Clio ont vécu, en Angleterre, une prise de conscience qui se fait écho.
Well, one of the things whenever it comes to English people, not always, but generally, people see Scotland and Wales, and they see Ireland. They don't see Ireland and Northern Ireland, So people just, whenever they hear your accent, they just say you're Irish in England generally, which pisses a lot of people off from here, But I didn't really mind what people called me at the end of the day, because I don't care. So,
This is a good answer.
Some people really take issue and will get very annoyed about it, but I don't really mind, because, people, especially if they're not from here, they don't fucking understand the politics. They don't understand. They've seen things that happened in the 90s and the 80s, late 70s, and they're like, oh fuck, they think it's all over, but it's, they don't understand the intricacies of our society here, So I wouldn't hold that against anybody if they nationalised me, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you not agree on the people that they are ignorant about what happened here on all the...
What's a bit of I think people, especially in mainland Britain, are very ignorant about their colonial past. And I'm sure it's the same for a lot of French people as well, so I don't feel like it's their fault that they haven't been educated about it in their schools where they should have been educated about it.
Quand on parle de Brexit à Clio, elle nous dit que le seul avantage de ce dernier est qu'il a permis à l'Irlande du Nord de reformer son gouvernement. Ironiquement, elle nous dit que c'est le premier truc intéressant qui se passe depuis un bail. Noé lui demande alors si elle a des attentes particulières de ce nouveau gouvernement qui vient de se mettre en place.
What I hope that they do is put different decisive issues aside and focus on the different social issues that need to be addressed at the minute. So obviously the health service here is worse off than any other health service in the United Kingdom. It's insane. The amount of people waiting to have cancer treatment, hip replacements, the waiting lists are way longer here than it is in Britain, and school. There's kids here that go to school 4 days a week because the education system can't afford to have them be here for 5 days a week, you know. So, but also I feel like Brexit has been one of the biggest drivers for the want of a border poll in Northern Ireland, big time. There's so many people who, and there's a lot of people from nationalist communities. I know, like some of my uncles and stuff who are from West Belfast, refuse to vote for Sinn Féin because they hate them. They don't think they're radical enough, you know, so they don't vote, right? So like they're completely 100%. If there's going to be a border poll, they're voting for it, like, you know, 100% to reunify. So I feel like Brexit has been a big contentious issue for even people that probably thought they would never vote for United Ireland. It's made them consider it, you know. So like people whose funding depends on European Union, that's, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see like if they done an opinion poll to see whether people want a border poll or not, you know. So but I think you have a lot of people who never thought in a million years they would vote for a United Ireland actually would. So
On explique alors à Clio que Noé nous avait dit, avant notre arrivée, que les gens étaient un peu blasés et n'avaient pas vraiment conscience des conséquences qu'aurait le Brexit sur leur
No
vie.
opinion.
yeah, because they didn't inform themselves. You know, it's
Yeah.
the most. I think apathy in politics is a very, very desperate, sad thing. Like, do you know, like something that impacts your life so much, you don't fucking read about it. You don't go and find out what people's policies are. Like, you know, I'm not voting. I mean, sorry. Like, if you don't vote, fuck you. Right, I need to pee. Sorry.
Yeah.
Pour finir, on pose notre traditionnelle question. Where are you from? D'où viens-tu?
Where am I from? I'm from North Belfast. And that's it.
Dans le prochain épisode, nous rencontrerons Connor. C'est le chanteur du Belfast Busking Band, connu dans la ville pour chanter dans les rues et dans les bars. Il nous racontera comment la musique peut être une arme politique et comment il s'est construit à mi-chemin entre une identité irlandaise et nord-irlandaise. À suivre sur cafébabel.com.